Hello, and welcome to the Genealogy Radio Show, the radio show keeping you in the loop. Today we have a fascinating show and a second part from last week's show about the GAA history. We have four lovely guests who I'll introduce as we go along on the history of the GAA. First, we have Nicholas. Nicholas, what can you tell me about the global expansion of the GAA clubs and the Irish diaspora?
Irish diaspora refers to the population of those with Irish citizenship and their descendants who reside outside of Ireland. This includes families who have emigrated from Ireland but have children who are still considered Irish by law. The usage of Irish diaspora is not limited solely to citizenship, which leads to believe there are about 80 million members. However, there are people who live outside of Ireland who may be citizens of Ireland but may reject the slogan of Irish diaspora, as they may see this as a label the government is using for their own purposes. Many people theorize that one of the main causes of Irish diaspora came from the Great Famine, where due to mass death and mass immigration, the population fell by 2 million people. However, this is disputed by the fact that Irish people had been emigrating in mass numbers since the 18th century with the improvements to building canals. Also, 4 years after the famine had ended, there were still record numbers of emigrants leaving Ireland, although this may be due to people seeing no hope for the country post-famine. By the year 1900, the population of Ireland was about half of its 1840 high and continued to fall during the 20th century. There have been many people who fall under the slogan of Irish diaspora who have set up GAA clubs outside of Ireland. There are clubs in places like the United States of America, the United Kingdom, but also in places like China, Vietnam, Australia, and New Zealand. An example of a GAA club outside of Ireland would be Hurling Club of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Hurling Club of Buenos Aires was founded in 1922, and it hosts games of hurling, Gaelic football, field hockey, rugby, and tennis. This was the first GAA club ever established in Argentina. Irish Argentine immigrants first introduced hurling to Argentina around the year 1887 and formed the Buenos Aires Hurling Club in 1900. However, due to World War I, the shipment of hurleys was delayed and pushed back, meaning that the playing of hurling was ceased until about 1920, and some of the first games of hurling around were playing around this time in Argentina. The first Irish people who moved to the United States moved in the 1600s, where they were commonly indentured servants. In these times, the Irish did not have a good relationship with the people of the United States, as Irish people were traditionally Roman Catholic, while most Americans at the time were Protestant, with many of these Americans having ties with Northern Ireland and the province of Ulster, which caused mass conflict. These Irish immigrants were often uneducated and thus worked mainly in the hard physical labour sector, which again caused conflicts. When the land required less cultivation, Americans were demanding their jobs back. Many Irish immigrants also were drafted to serve in the American Civil War in the 1860s. There has always been a very stereotypical image of Irish people in the United States as being hard labourers and drinkers, with many Americans seeing the Irish, even in modern times, as uneducated. Some of the largest Irish communities to this day in the United States can be found in places like Philadelphia, Boston, and Pittsburgh. Many cities across the United States hold annual St. Patrick's Day parades in celebration of these Irish communities. The largest annual St. Patrick's Day parade takes place in New York City. Over 2 million Australians in the 2011 Australian census reported to having some level of Irish ancestry. In the 2006 census, over 50,000 Australian residents said that they were born in the Republic of Ireland, and further 21 declared to have been born in Northern Ireland. This gives Australia the third largest Irish-born population outside of Ireland. It is estimated that between the 1790s and the 1920s, that around 400,000 Irish settlers emigrated to Australia. This was a mix of voluntary immigration, but also convicts being sent over to Australia. Many Irish people emigrated to Australia following the Great Famine. By 1871, Irish immigrants also accounted for 1/4 of Australia's overseas-born population. Irish Catholic immigrants are also responsible for the establishment of a Catholic school system in Australia. As of 2017, about 20% of all Australian children attend Catholic schools. Irish communities can be found in South Africa in places like Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Durban. Henry Norse, a ship owner in Cape Town, brought a small party of Irish settlers in 1818. In 1823, John Ingram bought 146 Irish people from Cork. 20 more arrived in November of 1849, and another 46 in March of 1851. A large contingent of Irish immigrants in South Africa fought in the Anglo-Boer War, on both sides, with many deciding to stay in South Africa after the war. Between 1902 and 1905, there were about 5,000 immigrants in South Africa. Today, the majority of white South African Catholics are of Irish descent.
Thank you for that, Nicholas. Now, next on the show, we have Kuan. Kuan, could you tell me a bit about how the GAA has adapted throughout the years in relation to the integration of other cultures as well as female sport?
Yeah, so the GAA has changed and progressed greatly over time in terms of interculturalism and the women's game. Interculturalism is the promotion of interaction and understanding between cultures. This seems to be the opposite of what the GAA stood for, as it was formed to promote and protect Irish culture alone. It has been said that the worst thing that ever happened to Irish culture was English culture. So it has been understandably difficult in the modern age for the GAA to accept that English sport and Irish sport can coexist. Now, it's not like the GAA was overzealous about ignoring other cultures. They were always compromising. The English language was necessary from the start. The Etihad skyline in Croke Park, the great walkway around the roof of the stadium, was funded by wealthy Irish sports fans from the United Arab Emirates. The field itself was grown with Dutch hydroponic technology. Foreign sport was more restricted. In 1924, the GAA gave Croke Park to be used in Ireland's first rodeo. In this event, American, Canadian, Mexican, Australian, and Argentinian cowboys would compete in bull riding, bringing this strange sport from the Irish diaspora to Ireland. There was a lot of debating a few years back about Croke Park being used for non-GAA. Now, as mentioned above, the rodeo and other sports not seen as direct competitors with Gaelic football and hurling were permitted, such as the 2 games of American football in Croke Park in the 90s. In truth, it was English sport that the GAA feared. Rule 27 of the GAA Constitution stated that a member of the GAA could be banned from playing its games if found to also be playing English games, such as soccer, rugby, or cricket. That rule was abolished in 1971, but Rule 42 still affected GAA property. The belief was that rugby and association football, also known as soccer, were in competition with Gaelic football and hurling, and that if the GAA allowed these sports to use their ground, it might be harmful to Gaelic games. In 2005, Rule 42 was relaxed by the GAA Annual Congress, and in January 2006, it was announced that they had reached an agreement with the Football Association of Ireland and the Irish Rugby Football Union to stage 2 Six Nation games and 4 soccer internationals at Croke Park. A similar deal was also agreed in 2007 and 2008. A match between Ireland and England on 24th of February 2007 was politically symbolic because of the events of the Bloody Sunday in 1972, 35 years earlier. There was considerable concern as to what the reaction would be to the singing of the British national anthem, God Save the Queen. Ultimately, the anthem was sung without interruption or incident and applauded by both sets of supporters at the match, which Ireland won by 43 points to 13, their largest ever win over England in rugby. Women's Gaelic games have progressed massively over their creation to now, particularly Gaelic football and camogie. Camogie, unlike other Gaelic games, is organised by the Camogie Association. However, where there is no independent camogie board, the GAA is recognised as an appropriate structure for the administration of the sport. This is extremely important in terms of camogie's international presence. Camogie is a fast-paced Irish stick and ball field sport played by women. The origin of the word camogie is very interesting, as men played hurling, a near identical game, using a curved stick called a camon. Women would use the shorter stick, which was referred to as a camogue. Then in 1904, the name was anglicised to camogie. 2 women, Maura Ní Kinnaid and Coit Ní Donica, were prominent Irish language enthusiasts and cultural nationalists. They were instrumental in the founding of the sport in 1903 with the help of one of their brothers, Tig, who drew up the rules. The Camogie Association was officially founded in 1904, but it was until 28 years later that the first Camogie All-Ireland Championship was played. 10 counties were entered in the inaugural All-Ireland Championship, which was organised on an open draw basis. Dublin were the eventual winners. Mayo man Sean O'Duffy donated a silver cup known as the O'Duffy Cup for the championship winners to take home. In modern times, the design of the cup has changed and is currently modelled on the Ardagh Chalice, which was first presented in 2007, lifted by Wexford captain Mary Lacey, as Wexford were crowned champions for the first time since 1975. This new model is valued at an estimated €25,000. Cork and Dublin dominated the sport in the early years, but the Camogie Association was torn by disagreements in the 40s. Neither Dublin nor Cork participated for a number of years, which left the way clear for new champions, including Antrim, which achieved 3 consecutive victories. The main competition in the sport is the All-Ireland Championship. The top 10 county teams play each other in the All-Ireland Championship season, which ultimately ends in the final at Croke Park every September. It has a record attendance of 33,154, and the final is televised live with a TV audience of over 300,000 people. Moving from camogie to football now, ladies Gaelic football was first played in 1926 when a parish league was organised in Curraclare, County Clare. It wasn't until 1971, however, that the first game ever of women's intercounty football was played between Tipperary and Waterford, with Waterford emerging as the eventual winners. It was 3 years after this game, in 1974, that the Ladies Gaelic Football Association was founded in a meeting held at the Hayes Hotel in Thurles, County Tipperary, almost 90 years after the Gaelic Athletic Association was founded in the same hotel. Women's Gaelic football has received huge investment in recent times. It was sponsored by Lidl in 2016 on a 3-year deal. Croke Park was the venue for the partnership announcement that has seen Lidl invest over €1.5 million in ladies Gaelic football in the first year of this deal, making this the most significant partnership announcement in Irish women's sport in the past decade. Ladies Gaelic football is recognised as one of the fastest growing female sports in Europe. Founded in 1974, the Ladies Gaelic Football Association has over 1,000 clubs in Ireland, and membership is growing by the day, as the game reaches women and girls from all over the country. In 2019, the All-Ireland Ladies Final, after the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup final, was the second largest attendance at any women's sporting event final in 2019.
Thank you for that, Cian. Our next guest on the show is Cian. Cian, who would you say are some of the players that have greatly impacted on the GAA in a positive way? And could you tell me a little bit more about them?
Sure. Since the establishment of the Gaelic Athletic Association in 1884, there has been a variety of hurling players over the years that have had an everlasting impact on the sporting association. Christy Ring is a player that has made a significant impact on the GAA. Nicholas Christopher Michael Christy Ring was born in Cloyne, County Cork, on the 30th of October, 1920. He grew up as the second youngest of Nicholas and Mary Ring's 5 children. Ring only began playing competitive hurling for a club after he was encouraged to by his teachers at primary school. He was 12 years old when he first appeared on Cloyne's minor team. Ring attended Cloyne National School until the age of 14, when he left to apprentice as a mechanic. Yet throughout his life, sport still played a central role to Christy Ring. Christy Ring made his senior inter-county debut in 1939, and then his senior championship debut in the 1940 Munster final between Cork and Limerick. During his senior career with Cork, Ring played in 6 of Cork's starting positions. Ring collected a total of 8 medals from the celebrated All-Ireland finals from his senior career, 4 of those years being consecutively from 1941 to 1944. Along with those 8 All-Ireland medals, Ring also earned 9 Munster Championship medals. He captained 3 All-Ireland winning teams through the years of 1946, 1953, and 1954. He remains the 3rd man to do this in GAA history. In 1964, he retired after 25 years of playing at senior level. Christy Ring, known by his nickname Ringy, died on the 2nd of March 1979 when he was 58 years old. He is regarded by many as one of the greatest hurlers to be seen in the GAA and a formidable player due to his speed, determination, and strength on the field. Michael John Mackey was born on the 12th of July 1912, in Castleconnell, County Limerick. He was the oldest son of John Tyler and May Mackey. He had 7 younger siblings. Like Christy Ring, Mick Mackey, as he was known, had a huge impact both on the GAA as well as on the Limerick team he represented throughout his senior career. Mackey was born into a family well established in the sport of hurling. His grandfather, who he was named after, Michael Mackey, promoted the game of hurling long before the GAA was even founded. He captained the Castleconnell team shortly after the GAA was established, as well as being a member of the original Limerick team that took part in the first All-Ireland Championships in 1887. Mackey's father was also well known in the GAA, ranking as one of the leading hurlers in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. He was captain of the Limerick County team in 1910 that lost to Waterford. His career spanned from 1901 to 1917, proof that hurling was in Mick Mackey's blood before he was even born. Mick Mackey was 17 years old when he first made his debut on the Limerick minor team, beginning his senior career during the 1930-31 National League. During Mackey's career as a senior hurler, he played during what was known as Limerick's Golden Age, winning a total of 3 All-Ireland final medals, 5 medals for Munster, as well as 5 medals during the National Leagues. He was part of the Limerick team when they finished runners-up in the All-Ireland finals twice, and captained the Limerick senior team to victory twice in the All-Ireland finals in 1936 and 1940. He was the first recipient of the all-time All-Star Award that existed from 1980 to 1994. Following Mackey's role as a substitute in the 1947 final against Cork, he officially retired from hurling. He continued to remain involved in the sport through a variety of roles he played, such as coaching, training, management, and refereeing. He died on the 13th of September 1982 at the age of 70 years old. Like Ring, many fans still refer to him as one of the best hurlers of all time long after his death. It is because of these men, among other players, that GAA continues to be one of the biggest associations in Ireland. I will now hand over to Connor.
Thank you for that, Cian. Now, to conclude our show, we have Connor. Connor, the Liam McCarthy and Sam Maguire Cup are the most famous pieces of GAA silverware. Can you please tell me a bit about the men behind these cups?
Yes. The life story of Liam McCarthy is potentially one of the most forgotten treasures of Irish history. Liam McCarthy was born in Southwark in London to Irish parents Owen and Bridget McCarthy in 1853. His parents fled from the famine-stricken town of Ballygarvan in County Cork 2 years before Liam was born. He grew up in a very close-knit Irish community in London. Sport was an important aspect of daily life for the McCarthys. By the age of 14, Liam and his Hurley were a regular sight on Clapham Common, and at the age of 22, he married Alice Padbury and had 4 sons with her. He was active in the London GAA from its foundation in 1886, having been a member of the Exiles of Erin Club. He was the first treasurer of the London County Board, eventually becoming the president in 1898. By the close of the 19th century, Liam was extremely active as a leader of London's ever-expanding Irish community. He was very involved in politics, and he held a seat in the local London Council. McCarthy did an enormous amount to promote Irish sport and social gatherings across the city. McCarthy joined the Irish Republican Brotherhood with his 4 sons in the early 1900s. He was also vice president of the Gaelic League and a member of the London Irish Volunteers. He was a major patron of the GAA and spent much of his own money in London sponsoring cups and medals for club games, as well as paying for hurling sticks. The secretary of the GAA at this time was a young post office worker from Clonakilty, West Cork, called Michael Collins. Collins and McCarthy's friendship began blossoming. Collins had established a national loan, primarily to raise funds for the operation of the Irish Volunteers, who around this time became known as the Irish Republican Army. McCarthy was appointed to London treasurer for the loan, and by the end of August he had amassed £250,000, the equivalent of 12 million euro in 2010. McCarthy purchased £50 of certification for himself on behalf for himself and his sons, William and Eugene. When the loan was redeemed, he used the money to purchase a silver cup, which was modeled on ancient Gaelic mither. He offered it to the Central Council of the GAA as a perpetual trophy for the All-Ireland Hurling Champions. And so we see the birth of the Liam McCarthy Cup. The Sam Maguire is the trophy given to the winners of the men's All-Ireland Gaelic football finals. The cup itself was commissioned in 1927 and was completed in 1928. It was modelled after the art at Chaw's and was named after the player and member of the GAA, Sam Maguire. The original cup was made by Hopkins & Hopkins in Dublin, costing £300 to make, about €25,000 in today's money. While commissioned to Hopkins & Hopkins, it was revealed in 2003 they outsourced some of the work to a silversmith called Matthew J. Staunton. Staunton had previously worked at famous Dublin silversmiths Edmund Johnson Limited. The cup was commissioned by friends of Sam Maguire and was gifted to the GAA in 1928, a gift which they gracefully accepted. The first winners of the cup were Kildare in 1928 All-Ireland football final. The cup stayed in use for about 60 years before it was replaced with a replica in 1988. The first winners of the new Sam Maguire Cup were Meath, who also happened to be the last winners of the old cup. Since then, the original Sam Maguire Cup has remained in the GAA's museum at Croke Park, being on display for the public. The namesake of the cup, the real Sam Maguire, was born in Dunmanway, County Cork in 1877. Upon leaving school, he joined the civil service and was assigned to London. As the time went on, he grew in prominence first in the GAA and later in the Irish Republican Brotherhood. He was a skilled footballer and played in 3 All-Ireland finals, including the 1900, 1901, and 1903 finals, even captaining the London team. After his playing career, instead he focused on the administrative side of the organization. He became a regular delegate to Annual Congress, chairman of the London County Board, and finally, a trustee of Croke Park. Maguire was also involved in the Irish War of Independence and was responsible for recruiting Michael Collins into the movement. He reached the rank of Major General and Chief Intelligence Officer in the Republican Army, in the Irish Republican Army. During the War of Independence, all major Republican operations in Britain were largely under Maguire's control.
That concludes our show for this week, and what an interesting show it was. Special thanks to Nicholas, Kuin, Keane and Connor for providing us with such rich information on the well-known association of the GAA and those associated with it. The show will be repeated on a Sunday for anybody who's missed it this week. And until then, we will see you next week on the Genealogy Radio Show at Radio Cork Abashkin.